Xavier O'Connor's hands were already raw and bleeding when he noticed his neighbor's fence had finally collapsed into the mud, and he knew fixing it would be the right thing to do even if he could barely afford groceries that week. The morning had started rough, as most mornings did lately. His 6-year-old daughter Emma had spilled orange juice all over her school uniform, which meant he'd had to dig through the laundry basket for something clean while simultaneously packing her lunch and trying to find his work boots. Single parenting was like juggling chainsaws while riding a unicycle, except the chainsaws were on fire and the unicycle had a flat tire. "Daddy, my socks don't match," Emma had said, looking down at one pink sock and one purple one. "That's the new fashion, sweetheart." "All the cool kids are doing it," Xavier had replied, kissing the top of her blonde head as he rushed her out the door. Now, after dropping Emma at school and finishing his shift at the construction site, Xavier stood in his driveway staring at the neighbor's fence. The woman who lived there, Willow Thompson, had moved in about 3 months ago. He'd seen her a handful of times, always well-dressed, always seemingly preoccupied with her phone. She'd wave politely, but they'd never really talked. The house she'd bought was one of the nicer ones on the street, which wasn't saying much in their modest neighborhood, but it was well-maintained with a beautiful garden. The fence between their properties had been leaning for weeks, and last night's storm had finally done it in. Sections of wood lay scattered across both their yards, and Xavier knew that if he didn't fix it soon, Emma might wander over there when she was playing, or worse, some of the wood could be dangerous with all those exposed nails. He didn't have money for fence repairs, not really. The truck payment was due, Emma needed new shoes because she was growing like a weed, and his mother's medication didn't pay for itself. But Xavier had been raised to help his neighbors, and he had some scrap wood in his garage from various projects. It wouldn't be perfect, but he could make it functional and safe. Xavier changed out of his work clothes and grabbed his toolbox. The afternoon sun was warm on his shoulders as he started gathering the fallen fence posts. He was so focused on his work that he didn't hear Willow approach until she spoke. "You don't have to do that." Xavier looked up, wiping sweat from his forehead. Up close, Willow was even more striking than he'd realized. She had long dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, warm brown eyes, and a concerned expression on her face. She was wearing jeans and a simple t-shirt, but somehow she made it look elegant. "I know," Xavier said, straightening up, "but it's a safety hazard and I've got the afternoon free. Besides, Emma plays in the backyard a lot. Don't want her getting hurt on any of these nails." "Emma's your daughter?" Willow asked, stepping closer. "I've seen her. She's adorable, always singing in the yard." Xavier couldn't help but smile. "Yeah, she's my whole world." 6 years old and thinks she's going to be the next Taylor Swift. "I'm Willow, by the way. I don't think we've properly introduced ourselves." "Xavier. Most people call me Xave." He held out his hand, then realized it was covered in dirt and pulled it back. "Sorry, I'm a mess." Willow laughed, and the sound was like wind chimes on a summer evening. "Please, let me at least pay you for this, or buy the materials. This isn't your responsibility." "I've got some wood I can use. It's really no problem." Xavier knelt back down and started pulling nails from an old board. "Then at least let me help," Willow insisted. Xavier looked up at her, surprised. "You want to help build a fence? Why not? I've got hands, don't I?" She smiled, and Xavier noticed a small dimple in her left cheek. "All right then, neighbor, you ever use a hammer before? How hard can it be?" As it turned out, pretty hard. Willow's first attempt at hammering a nail resulted in her hitting her thumb, and she let out a very unladylike curse that made Xavier laugh despite himself. But she was persistent, and after a few tries, she started to get the hang of it. They worked side by side for the next 2 hours, and Xavier found himself enjoying her company more than he'd expected. "So, what brought you to the neighborhood?" Xavier asked as he measured a board. "I needed a change," Willow said, holding the board steady while he marked it. "I was living downtown, but it was too busy, too impersonal. I wanted somewhere quieter, a real neighborhood where people actually know each other." Well, you've definitely found that. Mrs. Chen, 3 houses down, knows everyone's business. She's like the neighborhood news channel. Xavier grinned. But she makes incredible dumplings and watches Emma sometimes when I'm in a pinch, so I can't complain. What about Emma's mom, if you don't mind me asking? Xavier's jaw tightened slightly, but he kept his voice even. She left when Emma was 2, decided motherhood wasn't for her. We got divorced, and I haven't heard from her since. I'm sorry, Willow said quietly. That must have been incredibly hard. It was, still is sometimes, but Emma's worth every struggle. Xavier positioned the board and started nailing it in place. What about you? Family? No kids? Never been married. I've been so focused on work that I haven't really had time for much else. Willow paused, then added, I'm starting to realize that maybe I've been too focused on it. They continued working until Xavier's phone alarm went off, reminding him to pick up Emma from after-school care. I've got to get my daughter, he said, standing up and brushing off his jeans. But we've made good progress. I can finish the rest tomorrow. Thank you again, Willow said. Really? This is incredibly kind of you. That's what neighbors do, Xavier replied with a shrug. The next day, when Xavier came home from work, he found a large basket on his doorstep. Inside were fresh vegetables, homemade bread, expensive-looking cheeses, and a note in elegant handwriting. Thank you for the fence work. Hope you and Emma enjoy these. Willow. Emma was thrilled with the bread, declaring it the best she'd ever tasted. Xavier had to admit it was pretty incredible, and he found himself wondering about Willow more than he probably should. He finished the fence repairs over the next few evenings, and each time he did, Willow would come out to chat and keep him company. About a week after the fence was completed, Xavier was mowing his lawn when he noticed Willow standing on her porch, looking perplexed at something. He turned off the mower and walked over. Everything okay? My porch railing is loose, Willow said, wiggling the wooden rail. I just noticed it. It's probably dangerous, isn't it? Xavier examined it. The railing was indeed loose, but as he looked closer, he could see that the screws had simply worked themselves free. It was a 5-minute fix at most. I can tighten this up for you right now if you want. Just need a screwdriver. Would you? I'd really appreciate it. Xavier jogged back to his garage, grabbed his tools, and had the railing secured in no time. Willow watched him work with an expression he couldn't quite read. You're really handy, she said. Where did you learn all this? My dad taught me. He was a contractor. Died about 5 years ago, but he made sure I knew how to fix just about anything. Xavier tested the railing, satisfied with its sturdiness. There you go, good as new. Xavier, please, you have to let me do something for you. You've helped me so much. Really, it's fine. At least stay for dinner. I was just about to make something, and I always cook too much for one person. Xavier hesitated. He should probably say no. Emma was at his mother's house for a few hours, but he had laundry to do, bills to sort through, and a dozen other responsibilities. But the hopeful look in Willow's eyes made him pause. Sure, he heard himself say. That would be nice. Dinner turned out to be more than nice. Willow's kitchen was amazing, with marble countertops and professional-grade appliances that Xavier had only seen on cooking shows. She made pasta from scratch, and they talked for hours about everything and nothing. Xavier learned that Willow loved old movies, that she was terrible at keeping plants alive, and that she'd always wanted a dog but traveled too much for work. What kind of work do you do? Xavier asked, twirling pasta on his fork. Business consulting, Willow said quickly. It's pretty boring, honestly. Lots of meetings and paperwork. What about you? Construction. I'm a site supervisor now, which is better than the grunt work I used to do, but it's still hard on the body. I'm hoping to eventually start my own contracting business, but that's a long way off. Need capital for that, and right now I'm just trying to keep my head above water. Willow nodded sympathetically. It must be challenging, doing it all on your own with Emma. She makes it worth it, Xavier said simply. Every single day. When Xavier finally left that night, he felt lighter than he had in months. There was something about Willow that made him feel at ease, like he could just be himself without pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. Over the next few weeks, Willow seemed to find increasingly creative reasons to need Xavier's help. Her garbage disposal stopped working, which Xavier fixed by pulling out a lemon rind that had jammed it. Then her door was sticking, which just needed the hinges oiled. Her bathroom faucet was dripping, her gate wouldn't close properly, and her porch light kept flickering. Emma had noticed their neighbor's frequent visits and had taken an immediate liking to her. One Saturday, when Xavier was helping Willow with a squeaky door, Emma came running over with her soccer ball. "Miss Willow, do you want to play soccer with us?" Emma asked, her face flushed with excitement. "I'm not very good at soccer," Willow admitted. "That's okay." "Daddy's not good either, but we still let him play," Emma said matter-of-factly. Xavier laughed. "Thanks for that vote of confidence, kiddo." They ended up spending the afternoon in Xavier's backyard, kicking the ball around and laughing as Willow proved to be even worse at soccer than she'd claimed. Emma was delighted, running circles around both adults and declaring herself the champion. When they were all worn out, they collapsed on Xavier's back porch with lemonade. "You're really good with her," Willow said, watching Emma chase butterflies across the yard. "I try. Some days are harder than others." Last week, she had a meltdown at the grocery store because they were out of the fruit snacks she likes. "I felt like the worst parent in the world when everyone was staring at us." "You're not the worst parent. Not even close," Willow said firmly. "Emma is happy, healthy, and clearly loves you." That's what matters. Xavier felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the afternoon sun. He was starting to realize that his feelings for Willow were becoming more than neighborly, and that scared him. He couldn't afford to get distracted. Emma had to be his priority, and besides, what did he have to offer someone like Willow? She was educated, sophisticated, and clearly had money. He was a construction worker who clipped coupons and bought his clothes at discount stores. But despite his reservations, Xavier found himself looking forward to seeing Willow. She started joining them for dinner a few times a week, and Emma adored her. Willow was patient and kind with his daughter, listening to her long, rambling stories about school and asking genuine questions about her drawings and games. One evening, about 2 months after the fence incident, Xavier was giving Emma a bath when she asked, "Daddy, is Miss Willow your girlfriend?" Xavier nearly dropped the shampoo bottle. "What? No, sweetheart, she's just our neighbor, our friend. But you smile a lot when she's here, and you laugh more. You should make her your girlfriend. I think she's nice, and she said she likes my singing." "It's not that simple, Em." "Why not?" "On the movies, when people like each other, they just tell them and then they kiss and get married." Xavier had to smile at his daughter's simplified view of romance. "Real life is a bit more complicated than movies. But you do like her, right?" Xavier sighed, rinsing the shampoo from Emma's hair. "Yeah, I do, but sometimes grown-ups can't just be together because they like each other. There's a lot of other stuff to think about." "Like what?" "Like making sure you're happy and taken care of. That's always the most important thing to me." Emma was quiet for a moment, then said, "I'm happy when Miss Willow is here. You're happy too. So maybe the other stuff doesn't matter so much." Sometimes kids saw things more clearly than adults, Xavier thought as he wrapped Emma in a towel. The following week, Xavier's truck broke down. The mechanic gave him an estimate that made his stomach drop. There was no way he could afford the repairs and still make rent. He'd have to take the bus to work, which meant leaving even earlier in the morning and getting home later, which meant less time with Emma. He sat in his kitchen after putting Emma to bed, staring at the bills spread across the table, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. A knock at the door startled him. He opened it to find Willow standing there with a container of cookies. "I baked too many," she said, then stopped when she saw his face. "Xavier, what's wrong?" "Nothing, just tired." He tried to smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "That's not nothing, I can tell. What's going on?" Something about her concern broke through his defenses. "My truck broke down." The repair is $2,000, which I don't have. I'm just trying to figure out how to make everything work." Willow's expression softened. "Let me lend you the money." "No," Xavier said immediately. "Absolutely not. I can't take money from you. It's not taking, it's borrowing. You can pay me back whenever you're able." "Willow, I appreciate the offer, but I don't take handouts." "It's not a handout," she insisted. "Xavier, you've helped me so much over the past couple months, with the fence, with all the repairs around my house. Let me help you for once." "That was different. That was just fixing things. This is money." "Why is that different? Help is help." Willow stepped inside, uninvited, and looked at the papers on his table. "How much do you owe total? Not just for the truck, but everything?" "Willow, please. This is embarrassing enough without you seeing my financial disasters laid out like this." She ignored him, scanning the bills. Her face remained neutral, but Xavier felt his cheeks burning with shame. This was exactly why he couldn't let himself get close to her. Their lives were too different. She probably spent more on shoes than he made in a month. "I have a proposal," Willow said finally. "I need a lot of work done on my house. Real work, not just squeaky doors. I want to renovate the basement, fix the attic, update the deck. You're a contractor." "What if I hired you to do all of that work? I'd pay you fairly, and you could do it on weekends or evenings, whenever you have time." Xavier studied her face, trying to determine if this was genuine or just a clever way to give him charity. "Do you really need all that work done?" "Yes," Willow said, meeting his eyes. "I've been putting it off because I didn't know who to hire, but I trust you and I've seen your work. You're skilled, Xavier. This wouldn't be charity. This would be a legitimate business transaction." Xavier considered it. His pride wanted him to refuse, but his practical side knew he needed the money. And if Willow genuinely needed the work done, then it wasn't charity, was it? "Okay," he said slowly, "but I want to do it right. I'll draw up a proposal, give you an estimate, the whole professional thing. And if my price is too high, you're free to get other bids." "Deal," Willow said, extending her hand. They shook on it, and Xavier noticed how soft her hand was compared to his calloused one. Over the next few days, Xavier spent his free time assessing Willow's house and drawing up plans. She hadn't been exaggerating. The basement needed serious work, including waterproofing and new electrical. The attic had potential as a living space, but needed insulation and proper flooring. The deck was old and potentially unsafe. It was months of work, easily, and when he calculated a fair price for materials and labor, it came to a number that would not only cover his immediate debts, but give him a cushion for the first time in years. He presented the estimate to Willow on a Tuesday evening, after Emma was in bed. Willow looked it over carefully, then nodded. "This seems more than reasonable. When can you start?" "Really? You don't want to shop around?" "I told you, I trust you. Besides, your estimate is detailed and professional. I can tell you know what you're doing." They signed a simple contract that Xavier had drawn up, and he felt some of the constant anxiety that had been his companion for years ease slightly. He could get his truck fixed. He could pay off his credit card. He could maybe even buy Emma that bicycle she'd been wanting for her birthday. "Thank you," Xavier said quietly. "This means more than you know." "You're doing me the favor," Willow replied. "I've been nervous about having strangers in my house doing this work. With you, I know it'll be done right." Xavier started the renovations the following weekend. Emma was fascinated by the project and wanted to help, so Willow entertained her upstairs while Xavier worked in the basement. He'd hear them laughing together, Willow's patience apparently limitless as Emma asked endless questions and told rambling stories. One Saturday afternoon, about 3 weeks into the renovation, Xavier came upstairs covered in drywall dust to find Emma and Willow baking cookies. The kitchen smelled incredible, and music was playing softly from a speaker. Emma's face was covered in flour, and she was giggling as Willow showed her how to use cookie cutters. "Daddy, look, we're making stars and hearts and dinosaurs," Emma exclaimed. "I see that. Looks like you're having fun. Miss Willow is teaching me her secret recipe. But I can't tell you what it is because it's secret." Xavier caught Willow's eye, and something passed between them, something warm and promising. He realized with sudden clarity that this, right here, felt like a family, and that thought terrified and thrilled him in equal measure. After Emma went home to get ready for bed, Xavier stayed to clean up his tools. Willow helped him pack things away. "You're really good with her," Xavier said. "Emma talks about you constantly. Miss Willow said this, Miss Willow did that. You've become one of her favorite people." "She's a special kid. You've done an amazing job with her, Xavier." "I try. I worry sometimes that I'm not enough, that she needs more than one parent can give her." Willow stopped what she was doing and looked at him directly. "Emma is one of the happiest, most well-adjusted kids I've ever met. She's kind, curious, confident. That doesn't happen by accident. That happens because she has a parent who loves her and shows up for her every single day. Some days I feel like I'm just barely holding it together." "That's parenthood," Willow said with a small smile. "At least, that's what my friends with kids tell me. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be there." Xavier found himself moving closer to her, drawn by something he couldn't quite name. They were standing in her kitchen, the evening light making everything soft and golden, and he realized he wanted to kiss her more than he'd wanted anything in a long time. But Emma was waiting for him, and he couldn't let himself get carried away. He stepped back, breaking the moment. "I should go put Emma to bed," he said, his voice rough. "Of course," Willow replied, and was it his imagination or did she sound disappointed? That night, lying in bed, Xavier admitted to himself what he'd been trying to deny for weeks. He was falling for Willow, maybe had already fallen. But he didn't know what to do about it. His life was complicated, messy. He had a kid and financial struggles and an ex-wife who might someday decide she wanted back in the picture, though he doubted it. What if he told Willow how he felt and she didn't feel the same way? It would make things awkward, and he still had months of renovation work to do on her house. Worse, what if she did feel the same way but then realized that dating a single dad wasn't what she wanted? Emma was already attached to her. If Willow left their lives, it would break his daughter's heart. No, it was better to keep things professional, friendly, safer that way. But Willow seemed to have other ideas. She started finding more excuses to be around him while he worked. She'd bring him coffee or lunch, and they'd end up talking for an hour. She'd ask his opinion on paint colors or light fixtures, standing close enough that he could smell her perfume. She was always careful with Emma, never overstepping, but she was increasingly present in their lives. One evening, about 2 months into the renovations, Xavier's mother called. She'd fallen and hurt her ankle. It wasn't serious, but she needed someone to take her to the doctor the next morning, and Xavier's sister was out of town. Xavier immediately said he'd take her, but then he realized he'd promised to chaperone Emma's field trip to the zoo the next day. Emma had been looking forward to it for weeks, and he'd already taken the day off work. He called his mom back. "Is there any way you can wait until the afternoon? I have something in the morning I can't miss." "Xavier, honey, my appointment is at 9. It was hard enough to get that." "But maybe Mrs. Chen can take me." "No, you shouldn't have to ask the neighbors. I'll figure something out." Xavier hung up and sat down heavily on the couch. He could ask his boss for a different day off, but they were already short-staffed. He could miss Emma's field trip, but the disappointment on her face would kill him. "Daddy, what's wrong?" Emma asked, looking up from her coloring book. "Nothing, sweetie, just grown-up stuff." There was a knock at the door. Willow stood there with a container of leftover lasagna. "I made too much again," she said, then saw his face. "What happened?" Xavier explained the situation, and Willow didn't hesitate. "I'll take your mom to the doctor." "What? No, I can't ask you to do that." "You're not asking, I'm offering." "I don't have anything important tomorrow morning, and I'd be happy to help." "Willow, you don't even know my mother." "Then it's time I met her. If she's okay with a stranger driving her, that is." Xavier's mother, as it turned out, was more than okay with it. When Xavier called her back and explained that his neighbor had offered to help, his mom had been delighted. "Oh, bring her by tonight so I can meet her first. I don't want to be chauffeured around by someone I haven't even said hello to. So Xavier found himself bringing Willow to his mother's small apartment that evening, Emma in tow. His mother, Linda O'Connor, was a tiny woman with sharp eyes and an even sharper wit. She looked Willow up and down when they arrived, then broke into a warm smile. "So you're the famous Miss Willow. Emma talks about you nonstop." "All good things, I hope," Willow said, shaking Linda's hand. "Mostly good, though Emma did mention you're terrible at soccer." Willow laughed. "That's absolutely true. Athletic ability is not one of my gifts." Linda made tea, and they sat in her small living room while Emma played with the box of toys Linda kept for her visits. Xavier watched as his mother interrogated Willow with the kind of questions only a mother could get away with. Where was she from? What did her parents do? Why wasn't she married? Did she like kids? Willow answered everything patiently and with good humor. Xavier learned things he hadn't known. That Willow's parents had died in a car accident when she was in college. That she had a brother she rarely saw because he lived overseas. That she'd been engaged once, but he'd called it off 2 weeks before the wedding because he'd fallen in love with someone else. "That must have been devastating," Linda said sympathetically. "At the time, yes, but looking back, I dodged a bullet. If he could fall for someone else that easily, he wasn't the right person." "Very mature way of looking at it," Linda approved. "Most people would still be bitter." "Life's too short for bitterness," Willow said simply. On the drive home, Emma fell asleep in the backseat. Willow walked with Xavier as he carried his daughter inside and tucked her into bed. "Your mom is wonderful," Willow said softly as they stood in Xavier's kitchen. "She's pretty great, talks too much, asks too many questions, but her heart's in the right place." She didn't ask too many questions. "Oh, she was definitely sizing you up. Welcome to the O'Connor family gauntlet. You passed, by the way." "How can you tell?" "She made you tea in her good china. That only happens if she likes someone." Willow smiled, that dimple appearing in her cheek again. They stood in the dim kitchen, the only light coming from the small lamp over the stove. Xavier knew he should say good night, thank her for her help, send her home. But he didn't want to. He wanted to keep her here in this moment where everything felt right. "Xavier," Willow said softly, and there was something in her voice that made his heart race. "Yeah, I need to tell you something." "Okay," he said, though his mouth had gone dry. "I haven't been entirely honest with you." Xavier felt his stomach drop. Here it was, she was married. She was moving away. She was going to tell him this whole friendship had been some kind of social experiment. "Those things I kept asking you to fix," Willow continued, not meeting his eyes. "Most of them weren't really broken. I mean, some were, like the fence. But the garbage disposal, the squeaky door, the loose railing, I could have fixed those myself, or called a handyman." Xavier stared at her, not understanding. "Then why did you ask me?" "Because I wanted an excuse to see you, to spend time with you." Willow finally looked up at him, her eyes vulnerable. "I know that probably sounds crazy, but from the first day, when you started fixing that fence without being asked, I just knew I wanted to know you better. And then the more time we spent together, the more I wanted to be around you. You and Emma, you've made me feel more at home in the past few months than I've felt anywhere in years." Xavier's heart was pounding so hard he was sure she could hear it. "Willow, you don't have to say anything," she interrupted quickly. "I know your life is complicated. I know Emma has to come first. I'm not expecting anything. I just wanted to be honest with you." "Can I talk now?" Xavier asked, a smile tugging at his lips. "Oh, yes, sorry." "I've been trying not to fall for you," Xavier said, watching her eyes widen. "Because I didn't think someone like you would want someone like me. A broke single dad who drives a beat-up truck and clips coupons. But Emma was right." "Emma was right about what?" "She asked me a few weeks ago if you were my girlfriend. I said no, that life was more complicated than that. But she said she's happy when you're around, and I'm happy when you're around, so maybe the other stuff doesn't matter." Xavier took a step closer. "And she was right. I am happy when you're around, happier than I've been in years. I think about you all the time. I look forward to seeing you every day. And if you're telling me that you feel even a fraction of that, then I don't care about complicated. We'll figure it out. I feel more than a fraction of that, Willow whispered. Xavier closed the distance between them and kissed her. It was soft at first, tentative, like they were both afraid this might be a dream. But then Willow's arms went around his neck, and his hands found her waist, and the kiss deepened. It felt like coming home, like finding something he hadn't even known he was looking for. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Willow rested her forehead against his. I should probably tell you something else, she said. If you're about to tell me you're secretly a spy or an alien, I'm going to need a minute to process. Willow laughed softly. Not quite that dramatic, but I haven't been entirely truthful about my work. You're not a business consultant. I am, in a way, but it's my business. I own Thompson Consulting. We're a pretty big firm. I started it 10 years ago, and we've grown significantly. I'm not just comfortable, Xavier. I'm wealthy, very wealthy. Xavier pulled back slightly to look at her face. How wealthy are we talking? Billionaire wealthy. Billionaire, Xavier repeated, the word feeling strange in his mouth. Like with a B. Yes. Xavier took a step back, running his hand through his hair. A billionaire. Willow was a billionaire, and here he was, barely scraping by, wearing jeans with holes in them and worrying about whether he could afford to take Emma to a movie. Xavier, please don't pull away. This doesn't change anything. Doesn't change anything. Willow, you're a billionaire. I'm nobody. You're not nobody. You're a man who works hard and loves his daughter and helps his neighbors and makes me laugh. That's not nobody. But why didn't you tell me? At first, because I liked that you didn't know. People treat me differently when they find out about the money. They either want something from me or they're intimidated by me. You just treated me like a person. Like Willow, not like Thompson Consulting's CEO. And then, after we became friends, I didn't know how to bring it up. I was afraid you'd react exactly like you're reacting now. Xavier paced across the kitchen. His mind was racing. All those times she'd needed help, all those repairs. Had she been slumming it, playing some kind of game? But no, that didn't match the woman he'd come to know. Willow was genuine. Her feelings for Emma were real. The way she looked at him was real. When you moved here, Xavier said slowly, you could have bought any house in any neighborhood. Why here? Because I was tired of living in a world where everyone wanted something from me, where every interaction was transactional. I wanted normal. I wanted neighbors who'd wave hello and kids playing in the yards and people who cared about community, not networking. I found that here. I found you. Xavier stopped pacing and looked at her. She looked scared, vulnerable, and he realized she was worried about losing him. This woman who could buy anything she wanted was afraid he'd walk away. The renovation job, he said. You're paying me too much, aren't you? That's not the real market rate. It's a fair rate for quality work. Willow, she sighed. Okay, maybe it's on the higher end. But you're doing excellent work, and I want to pay you what you're worth. I don't want charity. It's not charity, Willow insisted, her voice rising slightly with frustration. Why is it so hard for you to accept help? Why can't you let someone care about you? Because I can't afford to rely on anyone except myself. Every time I've let someone in, every time I've trusted someone else to be there, they've left. My ex-wife left. My dad died. I learned a long time ago that the only person I can count on is me. I'm not going to leave, Willow said firmly. And your dad didn't choose to die. You can't compare that to your ex-wife's choices. Maybe not, but the end result is the same. I was left to handle everything alone. Except you're not alone now. You have your mom, you have Emma, and if you'll let me, you have me. I'm not asking you to rely on me financially. I'm asking you to trust me emotionally. Xavier felt his defenses crumbling. She was right. He'd been so focused on staying independent, on never needing anyone, that he'd forgotten what it felt like to let someone in. I'm scared, he admitted quietly. Emma's already attached to you. If this doesn't work out, if you decide a ready-made family isn't what you want, it'll destroy her. And what about you? Would it destroy you too? Yeah, Xavier said, meeting her eyes. It would. Willow crossed the kitchen and took his hands in hers. I can't promise that everything will be perfect. Relationships are hard work. But I can promise that I'm here, right now, choosing this. Choosing you and Emma. I'm not looking for easy. I'm looking for real. Xavier pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. I'm choosing you too, he said into her hair. I'm terrified, but I'm choosing you. They stood like that for a long moment, and Xavier felt something inside him settle. This was real. She was real. And maybe, just maybe, he deserved this. Over the next few weeks, they figured out what their relationship would look like. Xavier insisted on continuing the renovation work and accepting only the pay they'd originally agreed upon, though Willow made him compromise by letting her pay for Emma's upcoming birthday party. They went on actual dates, which was weird and wonderful for Xavier, who hadn't dated anyone since his divorce. Willow met more of his friends and family, and everyone liked her immediately. Emma was thrilled when Xavier sat her down and explained that Miss Willow was now his girlfriend. Does that mean she'll be here more? Emma had asked, if that's okay with you. That's very okay with me, Daddy. Does this mean you'll get married? Whoa, slow down there, kiddo. We're taking things one step at a time. But the truth was, Xavier was already thinking about forever. He'd never believed in soulmates or fate or any of that romantic stuff, but being with Willow felt like coming home. She fit into his life seamlessly, attending Emma's soccer games, cooking dinner with them, helping with homework. And Emma absolutely blossomed with the extra attention. She started calling Willow her best friend. Xavier also slowly learned more about Willow's real life. She had a driver who she rarely used because she preferred driving herself. She had a downtown office where she went a few days a week, but mostly she worked from home. She donated generously to various charities, especially those benefiting children and education. Despite her wealth, she lived relatively simply, choosing to invest in experiences and people rather than material things. About 4 months into their relationship, Willow took Xavier and Emma to a charity gala she was hosting. Xavier had been resistant at first. I don't belong at something like that, he'd protested. You belong anywhere I am, Willow had replied firmly. Besides, I want you there, both of you. So Xavier had rented a suit. Emma wore a beautiful dress that made her feel like a princess, and they attended their first high society event. It was overwhelming, with hundreds of people in formal wear, champagne fountains, and a live orchestra. Xavier felt completely out of his depth. But Willow never left his side, introducing him to people as her partner, and talking about him with such pride that Xavier started to believe he really did belong there. Several people recognized the quality of his work on various projects, and he ended up having conversations about potential contracting jobs that could be huge for his future business plans. Emma, meanwhile, charmed everyone she met. At one point, Xavier looked over to see her showing a group of wealthy donors pictures she'd drawn on the back of auction cards, explaining her artwork with complete seriousness. The donors seemed genuinely delighted. On the drive home, Emma fell asleep in the back seat, worn out from all the excitement. Thank you for tonight, Xavier said, reaching over to take Willow's hand. You were amazing. Everyone loved you. I'm pretty sure they were just being polite. They weren't. Marcus Chen told me he wants to hire you for a major renovation on his commercial properties. That's a huge opportunity, Xavier. That's thanks to you. No, that's thanks to you and your skills. I just provided the introduction. Willow squeezed his hand. You need to stop selling yourself short. You're talented, hardworking, and people can see that. A few weeks later, Xavier finished the renovations on Willow's house. The basement was now a beautiful family room with a home theater. The attic had been converted into a cozy office space with skylights. The deck was sturdy and expanded, perfect for entertaining. It was some of the best work Xavier had ever done. It's perfect, Willow said, walking through the finished basement. Better than I imagined. I'm glad you're happy with it. I'm going to miss having you here every weekend. I'll still be here every weekend, just not working. Good. Willow wrapped her arms around his waist. Xavier, I've been thinking. About the future, about us. She paused, seeming to gather her courage. I know it's only been a few months, but I'm sure about this. About you. I want this to be permanent. I want to be a part of Emma's life, officially. I want to be a part of your life, officially. Xavier's heart raced. Are you saying what I think you're saying? I'm saying I want to marry you. Not right now, not this second. But eventually, I want us to be a family. Xavier kissed her, long and deep. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. I want that too, more than anything. Really, really. I love you, Willow. I've been wanting to say that for weeks, but I was scared it was too soon. I love you too. I've loved you since you fixed that fence without being asked. They stood in the newly renovated basement, holding each other, and Xavier felt a peace he'd never experienced before. This was right. This was home. 6 months later, Xavier proposed. He didn't do it with a flash mob or a grand gesture. He did it on an ordinary Tuesday evening after putting Emma to bed. They were sitting on Willow's new deck, looking at the stars, and Xavier just knew it was time. Marry me, he said simply. Willow looked at him, surprised. What? Marry me. Be Emma's mom. Be my wife. Marry me. You don't have a ring. I have a ring. It's not fancy. I saved up for it, and it's probably nothing compared to what you could buy yourself, but I wanted to get it with my own money. It's in my pocket. But I realized I don't want to wait for the perfect moment because every moment with you is perfect. So marry me, Willow, please. Willow was crying now, happy tears streaming down her face. Yes, of course I'll marry you. Xavier pulled out the ring, a simple but elegant diamond on a white gold band, and slipped it on her finger. It fit perfectly. They told Emma the next morning over breakfast. Emma screamed with joy so loud that the neighbors probably heard. Does this mean Willow will be my actual mom? Emma asked, bouncing in her seat. If that's what you want, Willow said carefully. I could never replace your birth mom, but I would be honored to be a mom to you. I want that, Emma said seriously. My birth mom didn't want me, but you do, so you're my real mom. Willow pulled Emma into a tight hug, and Xavier saw tears in her eyes again. He joined the embrace, wrapping his arms around both his girls. His family. They got married 4 months later in a small ceremony in Willow's backyard. Emma was the flower girl and took her job very seriously, practicing her walk for weeks beforehand. Xavier's mother cried through the entire ceremony. Willow wore a simple white dress that took Xavier's breath away, and he wore a suit he'd actually bought instead of rented, thanks to the contracting business that was finally taking off. They didn't have a honeymoon right away because Emma had school, but they planned a trip to Disney World for the summer. Emma was already counting down the days. Married life was an adjustment, but a good one. Willow sold her house and moved into Xavier's, not because his was better, but because Emma was attached to it, and Willow thought maintaining stability for her was important. However, she did insist on renovating Xavier's house, and he had to admit the upgrades were nice. The money was still weird for Xavier. He'd gotten used to Willow's wealth in theory, but the reality of it still threw him sometimes. Like when she casually mentioned setting up a college fund for Emma that would cover not just college but graduate school if she wanted. Or when she insisted on paying off his truck completely as a wedding present. They'd had several arguments about money in their first months of marriage, but they always worked through them. I need you to understand something, Willow had said after one particularly heated discussion about whether they should buy a new house. Money is just a tool. It's not who I am, and I don't want it to come between us. So here's what I propose. We keep our finances mostly separate. You handle your business income and expenses, I'll handle mine. But we have a joint account for household expenses, Emma's needs, and family activities. We both contribute what we can afford. Fair, more than fair, Xavier had agreed. I'm sorry I'm weird about the money thing. You're not weird. You're independent and proud, and those are things I love about you. But you're also my husband now, and sometimes being married means accepting help from each other. I can work on that. We both can. This is new for me too. I've been on my own for a long time. Xavier's contracting business grew steadily thanks to referrals from people Willow knew, though he made sure every job he took was because of his merit, not his wife's connections. He hired 2 employees and was considering hiring a third. It still wasn't making millions, but it was profitable and satisfying, and he could set his own hours, which meant being there for Emma's school events. Emma continued to flourish. She was doing well in school, had a group of good friends, and seemed genuinely happy. She'd started calling Willow Mom without prompting, and Willow had cried the first time it happened. Xavier knew there might be complications down the road if his ex-wife ever resurfaced, but for now, they were just enjoying being a family. One evening, about a year and a half after they'd gotten married, Xavier came home from a job site to find Willow sitting on the couch with a strange expression on her face. "Everything okay?" he asked, immediately concerned. "I'm pregnant," Willow said, her voice a mix of wonder and fear. Xavier stood frozen, his brain trying to process the words. "Pregnant? I know we talked about maybe having kids someday, but I didn't think it would happen this fast. I'm 40, Xavier. I thought it might not happen at all, but I took 3 tests and they're all positive." Xavier crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. "This is amazing. This is incredible. We're having a baby." "You're not upset." "Upset? Why would I be upset?" "Because we didn't plan it. Because money is already tight sometimes. Because I'm old to be a first-time mom." Because Xavier cut her off with a kiss. "None of that matters. We're having a baby. Emma's going to have a little brother or sister. This is the best news ever." They told Emma that weekend. She was thrilled at first, then worried. "Will you still love me when the new baby comes?" She asked, her voice small. "Oh, sweetheart," Willow said, kneeling down to Emma's level. "We will always love you just as much as we do right now. Having another child doesn't divide our love, it multiplies it. You're going to be a big sister, which is a very important job." "What kind of job?" "Well, you'll have to help teach the baby things, and protect them, and play with them. Think you can handle that?" Emma considered this seriously. "I think I can. I'm very responsible." "You are," Xavier agreed, ruffling her hair. "The most responsible 7-year-old I know." The pregnancy was harder than Willow had anticipated. She was sick for the first 4 months, exhausted all the time, and worried constantly about complications. Xavier tried to be as supportive as possible, taking over more of the household duties and making sure she rested. Emma helped too, bringing Willow water and crackers and reading to her when she was stuck on the couch. Xavier found himself falling even more in love with his wife as he watched her grow their child. She was vulnerable in a way he'd never seen before, openly scared but pushing through anyway. She went to every doctor's appointment, read every pregnancy book, and prepared for this baby with the same thoroughness she brought to everything else in her life. They found out they were having a boy. Emma immediately started calling him her little brother and talking to Willow's belly constantly, telling the baby about her school day or singing him songs. "He's lucky to have you as a big sister," Willow told Emma one evening. "I'm lucky too," Emma replied. "I always wanted a sister or brother. And I always wanted a mom like you." Xavier, listening from the doorway, had to blink back tears. Their son, Wyatt O'Connor Thompson, was born on a Tuesday morning in April. The delivery was long and difficult, and there were some scary moments when the baby's heart rate dropped, but in the end, both mother and baby were healthy. Xavier held his son for the first time and felt his heart expand in ways he didn't know were possible. Emma got to meet her brother that afternoon and was immediately protective of him, insisting on helping with everything. "He's so small," she whispered, gently touching Wyatt's tiny hand. "We have to be really careful with him." "We do," Willow agreed. "But he's also strong, just like his big sister." The first few months with a newborn were exhausting. Xavier had forgotten how little sleep new parents got. Willow was breastfeeding, which meant she was up every 2 hours. Xavier tried to help as much as he could, changing diapers, doing laundry, keeping the house running, and making sure Emma still felt included and important. His business took a bit of a backseat, but his employees were understanding. One of them had just had a baby too, so they got it. Xavier cut back on taking new jobs for a few months, focusing on his family. Emma was an amazing big sister. She'd rush home from school every day to check on Wyatt, telling him all about her day even though he was too young to understand. She'd help pick out his clothes and would sing to him when he cried. Watching Emma with her brother made Xavier's heart swell with pride. When Wyatt was about 4 months old, Willow went back to work part-time. She'd been running her company remotely, but she needed to go into the office for important meetings. They hired a nanny named Clara who came highly recommended, and though Xavier was nervous about leaving Wyatt with someone else, Clara proved to be wonderful. Life settled into a new rhythm. Xavier's business continued to grow. He was now employing 5 people and had more work than he could handle. He was making good money, though still nowhere near what Willow made, and he'd finally started to feel less weird about the financial disparity. They were partners in every sense of the word. Emma was thriving in school and in her various activities. She discovered a love for art and was taking classes on weekends. Willow would take her, and they'd spend hours painting together, coming home covered in colorful smudges and laughing about their creations. Wyatt was growing like a weed, hitting all his milestones and developing a personality that was a perfect blend of both his parents. He had Xavier's stubbornness and Willow's curiosity, and he absolutely adored his big sister. On their 3rd wedding anniversary, after putting both kids to bed, Xavier and Willow sat on their back porch with glasses of wine, watching the stars. "Remember when you first fixed my fence?" Willow asked, leaning her head on Xavier's shoulder. "How could I forget?" "That was the day that changed everything. I saw you, you know. Before that day, I'd watch you with Emma in the backyard, the way you'd play with her, how patient you were, how you'd lift her up so she could reach the tree branches. I was attracted to you before I even met you. And here I thought you just had a thing for guys with calloused hands and sawdust in their hair." Willow laughed. "That too. But seriously, I fell in love with you because of the kind of man you are, the kind of father you are. I'd spent so long in a world where people measured worth by money and status, and then I saw you, measuring your worth by how happy you made your daughter. It was like finding something I didn't know I was looking for." "I fought it for so long," Xavier admitted. "Fought falling for you because I didn't think I was good enough. I'm glad you didn't give up on me. I would have waited as long as it took. You were worth waiting for." Willow tilted her face up and kissed him softly. "You still are, every single day." "I love you," Xavier said. "I love our life, our family, all of it. Even the chaos and the sleepless nights and Emma's dramatic meltdowns about homework. I love all of it because it's ours. I love you too. I love the life we've built together." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, and Xavier reflected on how far they'd come. 3 years ago, he'd been struggling to keep his head above water, convinced he'd be alone forever except for Emma. Now he had a wife he adored, 2 incredible kids, a successful business, and a future that looked bright. "Hey," Willow said suddenly. "Remember how I kept breaking things so you'd come over? You mean creating reasons to visit?" Xavier grinned. "Yeah, I remember. It was pretty transparent, you know. That door wasn't squeaky at all. You knew, I suspected, but I liked spending time with you too, so I went along with it. Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I was falling for you and I was terrified. It was easier to pretend I was just being a helpful neighbor than to admit I looked forward to seeing you every day." Willow laughed. "We were both ridiculous. We were, but it worked out. It really did." A cry came from inside the house. "Wyatt, right on schedule for his middle-of-the-night feeding." "I'll get him," Xavier said, starting to stand up. "No, I've got it. You have an early job tomorrow." They compromised by going together, standing over Wyatt's crib and watching him squirm and fuss. Willow picked him up, and Xavier put his arm around her as she nursed their son. Emma appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. "Is Wyatt okay?" she asked sleepily. "He's fine, honey, just hungry. Go back to bed," Xavier said softly. But Emma came into the room anyway, leaning against Xavier's side. He pulled her close with his free arm. The four of them stood there in the dim nursery, a perfect family unit, and Xavier felt a profound sense of gratitude for the broken fence that had started it all. Life wasn't always easy. They had their share of challenges and arguments and stressful days. But they faced everything together, and that made all the difference. Xavier had learned that accepting help wasn't weakness, that love multiplied rather than divided, and that sometimes the best things in life came from unexpected places. Like a billionaire who moved into a modest neighborhood and broke things on purpose just to spend time with the struggling single dad next door. Like a 6-year-old girl who knew her father was happy and wasn't afraid to advocate for that happiness. Like a man who'd been convinced he wasn't good enough, learning that he was more than enough. Years passed. Emma grew into a confident teenager with her mother's business sense and her father's work ethic. She decided she wanted to be an architect, combining creativity with practicality. Wyatt became an energetic, curious kid who followed his father around job sites and built elaborate structures with blocks and cardboard boxes. Xavier's contracting business became one of the most respected in the city. He still worked with his hands more than he needed to because he loved the craft, but he also employed 20 people and had a reputation for quality and integrity. Willow's company continued to thrive, but she scaled back her hours to spend more time with family. She discovered that success measured in quality time and happy memories mattered more than success measured in quarterly earnings. On their 10th wedding anniversary, they renewed their vows in the same backyard where they'd first married. Emma, now a young woman of 15, stood beside them as their witness. Wyatt, at 8 years old, carried the rings with serious concentration. 10 years ago, I married you thinking I knew what love was, Xavier said, holding Willow's hands, but I didn't. Not really. I've learned that love is showing up every day. It's fixing fences and pretending not to notice when things aren't really broken. It's late-night feedings and early-morning job sites. It's compromise and patience and choosing each other again and again. I choose you, Willow, today and every day. I choose you too, Willow said, tears in her eyes. You taught me that home isn't a place, it's people. It's this family we've built together. It's knowing that no matter what happens, we face it together. I love you more today than I did 10 years ago, and I'll love you more tomorrow than I do today. They kissed while Emma cheered and Wyatt made gagging sounds because 8-year-olds still thought kissing was gross. Their backyard was filled with friends and family, all celebrating the love story that had started with a broken fence and a man willing to help his neighbor. That night, after the party was over and both kids were in bed, Xavier and Willow sat on their porch once again. It had become their tradition, their quiet time to reconnect at the end of busy days. No regrets, Xavier asked, pulling Willow close. Not a single one. You. Just one, Xavier said, and Willow looked at him with concern. I regret that I almost let fear stop me from taking a chance on us. I almost let pride keep me from accepting your help. I almost convinced myself I wasn't good enough for you. But you didn't. You took the leap. Because you made it impossible not to. You kept showing up, kept creating excuses to be in my life, kept proving that you were serious about this. About us. Best decision I ever made, Willow said. Breaking that fence. The fence broke in a storm. You didn't break it. Didn't I? Willow asked with a mysterious smile. Xavier pulled back to look at her. Wait, did you actually break the fence on purpose? I'll never tell, Willow said, laughing at his expression. Willow Thompson O'Connor, did you sabotage your own fence to get me to notice you? A woman has to have some secrets. Xavier shook his head in amazement and pulled her back into his arms. It didn't really matter how it had started. What mattered was where they'd ended up. Together, with a family they both loved, building a life that neither of them could have imagined back when they were just neighbors who barely knew each other. The moon was full and bright, casting silver light across their yard. Inside the house, their children slept safely. Around them, the neighborhood was quiet and peaceful. And in that moment, with his wife in his arms and his whole life ahead of him, Xavier O'Connor knew he was the luckiest man alive. Because sometimes, the best love stories start with something as simple as a broken fence and the courage to fix it. And sometimes, when you open your heart to possibilities, you find that the life you were meant to have was right next door all along, just waiting for you to notice. The end.